Hey everyone! You know when you're looking at your pet's food label and you see an ingredient 100 times and you just kind of skim past it? Well, today we're going to stop and look at one of those because it has a fascinating story to tell about your pet's health. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's dive right in. If you've ever flipped over a bag of dog food or cat food, I'm willing to bet you've seen something like yeast extract or dried yeast on the ingredient list. It sounds pretty simple, right? But it's often the source of a really powerful functional fiber we're going to unpack today, beta-glucan. So what in the world is it? It's really easy to just dismiss it as another fiber or maybe even a filler. But as we're about to see, it plays a much more active role in your pet's body. So at its core, beta-glucan is a completely natural fiber. It's a polysaccharide, which is just a fancy science term for a long chain of sugar molecules all linked together. And you find it in the cell walls of all sorts of things, from the yeast in your pet's food to mushrooms, algae, and even cereals that we eat, like oats and barley. It's pretty much everywhere in nature. But here's where it gets really interesting. The scientific term for what beta-glucan actually does is a biological response modifier. Now that is a key phrase because it means this isn't some passive fiber that just passes through. No, it actively interacts with and actually modifies the body's biological responses. So how does it modify that response? Well, the best way to think about it is like a personal trainer for your pet's immune system. It doesn't just artificially boost it, like a shot of caffeine. Instead, it conditions it, it trains it, and it gets it ready to respond way more efficiently and effectively when a real threat comes along.
So how does this training actually work in practice? Let's take a look at its most researched benefit, and we'll start with studies done specifically in dogs.
And this just brilliantly illustrates that whole training effect. A 2014 study looked at dogs who were taking a yeast-derived beta-glucan. They measured something called phagocytic activity, which is basically the ability of immune cells to literally eat and destroy invaders like bacteria. And as you can see right there on the chart, the dogs getting the beta-glucan had a significantly higher level of this activity. Their immune cells were just plain better at their jobs.
Now this finding is incredibly important for pet owners. A 2011 study on puppies found that beta-glucan from yeast actually enhanced the effectiveness of their crucial vaccines for things like parvovirus and rabies. Basically, by priming the immune system, it helped their little bodies build a stronger, more robust response to the vaccination itself. That's a huge deal. But you know what? The story doesn't end with the immune system. Researchers started noticing that this biological response modifier was having some other pretty interesting effects that went way beyond just immunity.
Okay, get this. This is one of the most fascinating findings. That same 2014 study also looked at blood sugar. Now, in healthy dogs, the yeast beta-glucan did, well, pretty much nothing to their blood sugar. But, and this is the cool part, in dogs that had experimentally induced high blood sugar, it caused a significant reduction, helping to bring their levels back toward normal. It's like it only stepped in to help where it was actually needed.
And the research just keeps branching out. Studies in dogs have suggested it might help with weight management by increasing a hormone that makes them feel full. Other studies have found it can help reduce the clinical signs of skin issues like atopic dermatitis. And it's even shown some promise for supporting dogs with osteoarthritis. It's a surprisingly versatile little compound.
All right, everybody. Now, this is probably the most critical part of this entire explainer. Before you run out and assume all beta-glucans are the same, you have to understand this. Where it comes from and how much is given completely changes everything.
This chart just shows it perfectly. A very recent study in dogs compared beta-glucan from yeast versus one from algae. The yeast source, great for stimulating those immune cells we talked about, but the algae source had a bigger impact on markers of inflammation. And then you have oat-derived beta-glucan, which, in a different study on mice, was shown to enhance resistance to infection. So the takeaway is crystal clear. The source dictates the function. Okay, so if the source matters, what about the dose? Well, a 2023 study was looking for that Goldilocks dose. Not too much, not too little. They tested different levels of yeast beta-glucan in dog food, and they found that an inclusion of 0.14% delivered the best results for both the immune system and for beneficial changes to the gut microbiome. And here's the crucial counterpoint. Another study from 2023 found that when that same yeast beta-glucan was included at very low doses, around 0.02%, it had no significant effect at all. This tells us that just seeing yeast extract on an ingredient panel really isn't enough. The dosage has to be high enough to actually do something.
So, after all that science, what does this actually mean for you and your pet? Let's just boil it all down to the absolute essentials.
All right, let's recap.
First, think of it as a personal trainer for the immune system, not a quick fix boost. Second, the source is everything. Yeast, algae, and oats all do different things. Third, the dose is absolutely critical. Too little might not do anything at all. And finally, please remember, this is a promising ingredient, not some magic cure-all. As always, talk to your vet to figure out what's best for your individual pet.
And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question for the future, doesn't it? As we learn more about how, say, a yeast beta-glucan targets immunity and an algae-1 targets inflammation, could we be moving toward a future of truly personalized pet nutrition, using specific fibers to target specific health needs? It is a very exciting thought.